I've always found introductions really tricky. I get stuck lingering on every syllable, trying to articulate a sentence that doesn't get trapped at the back of my throat. I'm so anxious of making the wrong first impression that a lot of the time I can't muster the courage to even say anything. For someone who supposedly loves language, the way it pushes a spit around my mouth, the way it sounds, and the way it has the potential to cause change, I can find myself really struggling for words. Even now, as I'm working through this, I can feel myself stumbling, as if my mind and body are completely detached from each other, like they're lacking some sort of harmony. And although I can talk and whatever, I don't think my words will ever achieve a true proximity to what's going on in my mind. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to a glimpse of my queer, slightly confused and macabre world, documented through art. I suppose it kind of all started when I was really little. I knew from quite young that I didn't really fit in, so a lot of my life was spent on the fringes of things. I was always an observer, so I'd sit at the back of the classroom on those horrible like tiny blue chairs that you go back and you see them look even smaller now than they actually are. But I'd sit there and I'd watch, and I was so captivated by the way that people looked. I always found it really hard to speak to the other kids. I remember that, just feeling stupid. But I felt like I was learning from watching their behaviour, so I'd focus so much on what they were doing, and then I wouldn't quite know how to do it myself. So a lot of my younger years were me trying to perform what I saw other people doing. I suppose quite a lot of queer kids' experience is that they try and perform what everyone else is doing. They try and act normal, they try and look normal, but they can't quite do it. My mum is one of the most important people in my life because I could turn to her, and I felt comfortable with my mum, unlike feeling quite disquieted around other people. She's a performer, she's a singer, and she's fucking incredible. She's the one person that I look to for sort of real encouragement. Whenever she was in a venue near home, I would be taken and we'd sit, me and my brother, in the dressing rooms or the changing rooms full of costumes and wigs and makeup, and I remember always being so fascinated. And seeing that transformation in my mum was something that I was really attracted to. I think maybe it was the idea of putting on a character, and maybe that she became slightly more alive when she donned the outfit of someone else. Watching my mum play those roles, I think I developed a real interest in that sort of characterisation. So it would eventually lead into my drag. Hi, I'm Vilith, and welcome to my grim little world.
Who do you feel more comfortable as, Ollie or Vilith?
I used to think of Ollie and Vilith as two very separate beings, almost mutually exclusive from each other. But as I've progressed in my drag and learned to explore that side of my gender that I was so apprehensive of, I began to see Ollie and Vil as these two interconnected beings that are more fluid on this sort of gender scale that didn't quite exist before I started drag. So I don't necessarily feel more comfortable as either or, because I think they are collectively one being. If anything, I feel more comfortable presenting myself as Vilith, because I feel beautiful. I feel like people look at me and I get appraisal and approval from the validation that looking or being an interesting aesthetic object gives. Even today, I've noticed the difference. We filmed the male counterpart of the interview series yesterday, and I feel a lot more comfortable in the way that I can speak today, which is odd. I feel like I'm a lot more articulate when I'm in drag, and maybe it comes from confidence. Oh, I had a good thing to say then, my head went funny. Sitting at the back.
So go again.
That's why I'm an artist, because I need the art around me to express myself rather than the words, because the words get so tricky and so confused.
I thought, how could you waste that much time on me?
But I think definitely putting on all of this makeup and putting on the hair allows you to assume sort of another identity. And sometimes that identity has more volition than me as a person. Vilith exists only momentarily, at least for the meantime. She kind of exists in this world where it's like, okay, she can be taken off.
Do you consider yourself to be art or the artist?
Oh, I really like that question. Realistically, I think the word that is closer to what I'm doing is I'm a creative. I create things around me, and the word art is so limiting, I think. It's also the most universal word, but the way that everyone looks at art, they consider it a certain thing. You know, we don't look at graffiti necessarily as art, but it's art in its own right. So the popular and sort of vernacular definition of artists, of being an artist, doesn't quite define what I'm doing, because I think a lot of people wouldn't consider me an artist, and I don't consider myself an artist because of that, in the popular sense of the word. Sculpture is one of my favourite mediums because it is so... I think it's one of the most intimate ways of doing art. It's active, it responds to the environment it's around. I feel like that in itself is quite close to what drag is doing, because drag also responds to the environment it's placed in, and it can be viewed from any animal. It can be viewed from any animal. What the fuck?
Any animal can see it.
Any animal can see the clay.
Do you ever feel that there is negative judgment or even hate towards you because of your art?
I mean, drag is slightly peculiar in that it definitely viscerally challenges people, just looking at me in itself as a political statement. So I feel like it does evoke certain reactions from people. In drag, I have been lucky enough to not experience too many negative events. I mean, from a really young age, I remember being called like gay, but not in a statement way that was meant as an insult. And it was used as an insult about me, directly to me, but it was also used in regards to other things. It was like someone, like in the colour pink, oh, that's so gay. And you learn that gay or queer or anything along those lines is a negative thing because it's constantly used in this like derogatory manner that you begin to fear it yourself. I think I spent a lot of my life internalising the homophobia that was being forced on me by other people, whether that be direct homophobia, including slurs, or like there was one time I was physically assaulted. You internalise that from an external pressure and begin to build up this own hatred in yourself of the queer part of you. And I think now I'm beginning to unpick that. Experiences I've gone through have made me so much stronger as a person and amplify the art that I'm doing. And I'm almost thankful that, you know, that I've been through those experiences because it made me a lot stronger. there was this like race we had to do at school. We were all doing a running race. I was naff at sports, absolutely awful. But we had to design our own t-shirts for this race. So on the front it says, Oliver, go, we will win. And on the back there is a skull with a sword through it that's bleeding green, that has a nosebleed and it's crying, and there's goblins and pumpkins. And I think that's potentially one of the best reflections of me now, is that little t-shirt. But that's one of my little items that I hold on to, because it reminds me of where everything started. Can we cut it there and let me just get myself back together? Sorry. It's hard. I think it's hard to do this sort of stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. Are you an emotional person?
Am I an emotional person?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm really in touch with my emotions. Because I was so, lonely is the wrong word, but because I felt quite isolated when I was younger, I was really in touch with my emotions, and you learn to navigate them slightly quicker than the rest of the world does. I think that's something that definitely marks my queer experience, is that I learnt my emotions very quickly and from a very young age.
Need a world like any other
We've taken a while to come to a conclusion, which in itself is perhaps the wrong word. Let's say a pause. A juncture maybe in the story that seems to keep unravelling. We wanted to close this mini documentary with something a bit more finite. As I'm sure you'll have come to recognise, for me art is something shaky, with blurred parameters that cannot truly be defined. To say I do drag means I dabble in a bit of everything. I enjoy the benefits of every medium. In this regard, my work is often quite confused. So to tie up any loose ends, I thought it best to finish where my drag first found its form, in my quote-unquote drag name, Vilith Grimm. Originally taking my name from a Rossetti oil painting, it derives from the mythological seductress Lilith. As an early feminist figurehead in the original femme fatale of literature, Lilith was the first wife of Adam in Hebrew mythology. She was not only an empowered female, but for me, she personifies those on the fringes of society. In a sense, she speaks to the queer experience. Lilith became a figure I saw myself recognised in, which doesn't happen a lot for us queer folk. However, it was a vilification of her supposed queerness that really inspired my drag, in turn leading me to resolve upon Grimm as a surname. In its first meaning, Grimm is intended to recall the adjective of the same label. Like Lilith, my deviance from the social norm has made me feel like an outcast who's been made to feel abnormal or different or like the outsider in mainstream society. In performing a character, like my mum would on stage, Vilith rewards me with a fleeting moment of escape and the opportunity to fall into a fantasy world. Drag has truly changed my life. It's supplied me with a pertinent language to express and resolve the issues which have or still do trouble me. I started drag with the intention of making art, but instead it's gone on to make me. In the most moments of doubt, when I can't get my words together, Vilith has always been a quiet source of security. Whether she was named or not, she's always been looming inside. I grew up feeling like things would have been easier if I were born a girl. I wouldn't have felt ostracized so much. I would have fit in. I wouldn't have felt so ashamed. My drag is really a tribute to my experiences as someone who just doesn't fit in, someone who doesn't see themselves reflected in a gender binary. It's an ode to that little boy who didn't know who or what he was, and to that mystery girl that always seemed to come to the rescue. Though Vilith Grimm started as merely a project, distinctly divorced from Ollie, just a name for some fantasy figure I dreamt up, she's now really a part of me. We're one and the same, no matter how I present on the outside.
I know I'll take advantage of my free speech. Give me credit where credit's due. I will settle all your debts if you ask me to.